official corruption, economic inequality, and environmental degradation that were going to kill the country. That this was the most intense anti-corruption movement in 2,000 years. During Xi's first and second term, they lifted nearly 100 million people in the last 5 years out of absolute poverty. China, in the last 10 years, has become a global leader in green technologies. Number one. For as long as I could remember, since I began my career as a venture capitalist 30 years ago, when I returned from America, I went to school there, came back to China. Every 10 years or so, there is some major crisis that was going to sink China. Okay, China would be in some serious trouble, and the troubles are real. Okay, I remember when I first graduated from school in America, I came back, it was in the early 1990s. Those post-1989 years were difficult. Okay, everybody would say Chinese economy will buckle under the sanctions. Okay, but then we survived, powered through that one, and then there was the financial crisis, Asian financial crisis. That was bad. I don't know if you can remember. And then there was the Zhurongji reforms. Okay, the real estate bubble burst. That sounds familiar. I mean, Jingmao Tower, I don't know if you, was empty, was just built completely empty, nobody in it. Okay, and these days we have a serious problem with youth unemployment because unemployment is skyrocketing in the country. But I tell people, God, at that time during the Zhurongji reform, everybody knew someone that was unemployed. Every family of virtues felt like somebody lost their job. In Shanghai and up in Northeast, that's worse. Okay, we thought we'd never get out of that one. We power through that one. Okay, so all the troubles are real, but the rest is history. So I look back at Xi Jinping's tenure so far. In 2012, 10 years ago, what were the serious troubles that were going to kill China? That was going to end the Chinese experiment. Okay, if you're journalists at that time, you will remember because you were probably writing about them. The three things: official corruption, economic inequality, and environmental degradation. Three major problems, major crises that were going to kill the country. Okay, that's going to end the Chinese experiment. That's going to end the Chinese project. Everybody was talking about it, if you remember. Okay, I have a PowerPoint, but so corruption. Okay, Hu Jintao, the General Party Secretary at the time, said himself, failing to handle corruption is going to end the party and the state publicly. Okay, and the New York Times, of course, reporting on corruption every day. Okay? And they're saying that, corruption is the DNA of the party state. So they could never fix it. So it's going to sink the state. Okay, liberal democracies are inherently so good at correcting corruption. Everybody's so clean in liberal democracies. Okay, so 10 years, I was surprised. I was shocked with the rest of people. I studied politics. I'm a student of politics. Nobody had ever seen an anti-corruption campaign like this one. He was a famous historian and writer in China. He wrote that this was the most intense anti-corruption movement in 2,000 years. Okay, nobody had ever seen anything like it. Okay, so the outcome, we're not there yet. There's still corruption, but everybody on the ground will tell you, much better, much better. If you look at the data, this is the Elderman trust parameter, okay? Trust in government, trust in institutions, social institutions. In the last 10 years, the US and China have diverged. The US is dropping like a rock. Okay, and we're moving up. We're not rising like a rocket, but we're moving up. Okay? So corruption. So I don't broadcast this. I said Xi's report card. I saw this. I will be in trouble. Who am I to give Xi a report card? I want to delete that. Okay, so this is an interim assessment of General Secretary Xi Jinping's track record. One on corruption. Okay. Second, economic inequality. Okay. We had 20, 30 years of breakneck growth of 10, 20 years, 30 years of market ruling everything. Okay? And the result was tremendous growth. But the byproduct was a few got really, really rich, and the rest are better off than they were before, but the gap widened tremendously. Okay? I mean, we created more billionaires than any other country in that period. Okay, think about that. We're a socialist country. Okay? And our Gini coefficient surged over 0.4. If you study politics, you know this is revolution business. Okay, 0.4, dangerous. So everybody thought this would be an intractable problem. Why is it so intractable? Because the greatest country since the birth of mankind, the United States of America, could not fix that problem. Okay, the best political system since sliced bread, liberal democracy, could not fix that problem. So of course, China's dead in the water. Couldn't fix inequality. We're going to have revolutions in our hands. Okay, so obviously we know what happened. Okay, tremendous government initiatives to fix poverty. I mean, in the last 10 years, during Xi's first and second term, they lifted nearly 100 million people in the last 5 years out of absolute poverty. I know the baseline's pretty low. Okay, nobody wants to be there. It's nothing. You're not sitting FCC having lunch there. Okay, but we lifted that 100 million people out of absolute poverty. It was a tremendous project. Many people died on the front line. Communist Party cadres died, gave their lives, thousands, because the conditions were treacherous in those rural areas, some of them very remote. Okay, it happened. I mean, it's never happened in Chinese history. I would put it to you. I haven't done my research, so I could be wrong, but I think China, the Chinese Communist Party, under the leadership of Xi Jinping, in the last 10 years, had lifted more people out of absolute poverty. And the hardest, bear in mind, this is the last 100 million, which is always the hardest. It's easier when you're really poor to lift the first group and second batch and third batch. This is the very last batch of people who are living in absolute poverty. They've done that for more people than any other country, currently in history of man. Okay, I venture to suggest we should research that and see if that's correct. Okay, but I think that should probably be true. Yeah. So, and the Common Prosperity Initiative, there's a paradigm shift in China's development model. We've developed fast, very successful, but we can't leave people behind. We got to close the gap. So our Gini coefficient is improving. Okay? We're not there yet. Okay? Well, I always say it's a scandal. Okay? I'll say this publicly. Okay? We're the only major economy in the world, only one, that does not have an inheritance tax, that does not have a property tax, and does not have capital gain tax. Think about that. And we're a socialist country. Yeah. So there's a long way to go, but I think the report card is pretty decent for now. Third, environmental degradation. So if you go back 2012, if you're reporting about China, you're probably writing about my every day. Okay, this was going to lead to revolutions. Nobody's talking about Wumai anymore. If you go to Beijing, it's blue sky most days. Okay, one video, I remember one year, one video went viral. It could have caused major social unrests. Okay, this is just for China. Okay, globally, I think China has been a leader in dealing with climate change. Okay, with the Paris Accord, and we have played down the principle of so-called a common but differentiated responsibility. which basically says that greenhouse gas, the effects of greenhouse gas are cumulative. So Western nations, they've accumulated so much, and now we're developing, you want us to stop. But we kind of played down that principle. We still hold to that principle, but we played down that in climate negotiations, I believe. And China, in the last 10 years, has become a global leader in green technologies. Number one. Okay. So these three major challenges, these three major crises that were going to stop China's development and its track, I believe had been not totally resolved, but achieved tremendous successes. Now, so what's going to sink us now? Okay. If I go downstairs and get the papers, New York Times, Wall Street, get all your papers down there, it's free. I come and read them all the time. Two things. I'm going to talk about one. I won't have time to talk about the other. One is the economy. Okay. The Chinese economy is slowed, and second is geopolitical conflicts. All right. So the economy, I talked about in the last chapter, that what is happening is that this has been happening for a few years now. The three major pillars, the three locomotives for China's market economy in the last 20, 30 years. Market economy, okay? Real estate, which accounts for nearly a third of our GDP. Consumer internet, you all know that, the platforms. And low-end manufacturing. Since we joined the WTO, we became the factory for the world, okay? All three had sort of run out of steam by 2015. Okay, if you look at the data, before that, our total factor productivity has stagnated, which means that we're adding GDP, but we're not becoming more productive. Okay. It had run out of steam, especially like real estate is huge bubble, risk. Okay. Manufacturing, we've been moving up the value chain, but gradually and slowly. Quite ways to go. And then the last is infrastructure. That's done by the government. So I'm talking about just market economy. Okay. Now, what needs to happen is we need to move from this old paradigm to a new paradigm, to where we can make more money out of our existing economy and develop new industries. Otherwise, we'll be stuck in the so-called middle income trap. Okay. So if you look at the two new directions, okay, one is our existing economy, our existing industrial capacity. Our industrial capacity is China's biggest asset. China's industrial capacity is about 35% of the world's. Okay, we're bigger than US, Japan, Germany put together. I used to say that, and then last month, my research assistant said that the numbers have improved actually in the last 3 months, that China's industrial capacity is now bigger than a combination of US, Japan, Germany, and India. Okay. But the value add of that industrial capacity is still relatively low. It's about 12%. It's like the gross margin of our industrial capacity, 12%. When the US, in the 1970s, when they were at the height of their industrial capacity, their gross margin is about 35-40%. Okay. And how much is that worth? Our industrial capacity is worth about 5 to 10 trillion US dollars a year. That's the denominator. To go from the numerator, go from 12% to 35-40%, think about how big the pie is. Okay. Maybe 8 to 10 points is for semiconductor. Okay. So we need to do that. Second is new industries that are driven by technology innovation, day one. Alternative energy, new materials, bioengineering, life sciences. Okay. Those China is doing great. Okay. So all of that, I believe the political leadership had concluded the market forces could not be relied upon to engineer this transition. So this had to be done through political initiatives, top down. Right. I agreed to that view. I'm a venture capitalist. I knew we weren't going to those directions. We wanted to bet more on consumer internets. And a lot of my colleagues, I'm in venture capital, I do technology, I don't do real estate, but they still want to do more real estate. Okay, so there is a gross misallocation of capital, market misallocation of capital, that's being reallocated by political initiatives, by policies. And then we'll see if the market catches up. Okay? So this is what's happening in the Chinese economy. And we're now in a difficult period. I quote the Italian communist Antonio Gramsci, who said that the old is dying, but the new is struggling to be born. And we're in the interregnum. And this is what the Chinese economy is now. And I expect that to last 2, 3, 4 years. But this is the tough period that we have to go through in order to get to the next stage.